Hello, and welcome to another video for 7th grade U.S. history. Here's one on how to answer midterm questions and preparing for your midterms. So in this one, I'm going to do a little bit of talking about question types that you're going to see, some of the historical knowledge you should prep for, analyzing documents, answering questions, tips for your midterm, and then specifically the long answer or paragraph answer questions in section 2. So you should be able to go around and see each piece, but I do recommend watching each part because the whole video should give you the right mindset and the right tips for walking into this midterm. So you will get a multiple choice section on this midterm, but none of the questions are just going to be straightforward multiple choice. All of them will have a document attached to it. Each multiple choice question, you will have to do a reading, look at a quote, look at a document, a map, a drawing, a chart, a painting, and then you will be answering your question based on the document you just looked at. So it will be important to start thinking about analyzing and dissecting documents before you walk into this, which we will do in this video. We'll look at some of them and kind of walk you through how to do them. You will also have writing questions. Your section 2 will be writing, where you'll have to answer historical context or historical circumstances questions, which, as we know, if you're asked for the historical context behind a document or event, I really want to know the background. And the easiest way to think about background is what caused this event to happen. When you start thinking about what caused that document to be written or what caused the event that you're seeing, you start to put the pieces together of what else is going on in this time period. You might be asked point of view questions. You'll be asked the author's point of view, which I want to know. What does the author believe? What are the author's thoughts and opinions based on what you read in the document? You'll be asked the purpose. If you're asked the purpose of a document, I want to know why the author wrote it. You'll have compare-contrast documents, so you'll notice this line here is there because all of the questions above that line are about one document. You read a document and give the context, the point of view, or the purpose. These ones under the line are where you are using two documents. So if you're asked to compare contrast, I want to know how the two documents are similar to each other and different. Same thing with a turning point question. Remember, a turning point is a significant change in history. So if you're given two documents and a turning point question, I want to know how both of those documents change history in the same exact way. Your responses are pretty specific, so those first set, historical context, point of view, purpose, the ones where you're using only one document, they're shorter responses. That's why short is in quotes, maybe 3 sentences. But then those other two, the ones where you're using two documents, if you're given a compare-contrast or you're given a turning point, the midterm will tell you, write a paragraph. Paragraph answers are longer. If it tells you to write a paragraph, it's got to be at least 6 sentences. And that's because those paragraph answers are really focused on needing a topic sentence, a summary of your overall argument. You have to cite evidence from the documents, and you have to use outside knowledge from class. Your paragraph answers, there are more requirements, but we're going to look at some of those specifically towards the end. But just so you're aware, multiple choice questions based on a document, some shorter responses where you're using one document, and then paragraph answers, which are longer and use two documents. So, to prep for the midterm, one of the things you'll need to do is be prepared for historical knowledge. What you've been learning through your first half of the year, just content and material. So just super quickly, you have the topic of Native Americans you should be familiar with, from Paleo Indians first stepping foot into the Americas over the Bering Land Bridge. Following warm weather, they're nomadic, they're hunter-gatherers. They will settle into the Mayans, the Aztec, the Inca, and then we take a look at Native American groups, their values, family, community, nature, religion, and then a case study on the Iroquois. You should be familiar with Native Americans as a whole topic. Same thing with the Age of Exploration, that's what comes next. We skip forward all the way to the 1400s when Europeans do have the technology to explore. They're looking for places to trade, they're looking for a sea route to Asia, and it does connect the world. It does connect the old world and the new world, so that way Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas can interact, can trade with each other, which will lead right into Europe expanding. Europe will now start to go to the New World, looking for God, gold, and glory. Unit 3 is this expansion into the New World. We see Spain, we see England and France taking land in the New World. The unit will then zoom into the English colonies, Roanoke, the lost colony that vanished, Jamestown, that's where we see the story of Pocahontas, cash crops, like tobacco, the House of Burgesses, and then the Plymouth colony, the Pilgrims settling and signing the Mayflower Compact. We'll look at the expansion of those 3 early colonies into the 13 colonies, which were broken up into 3 regions. We look at the early versions of representative democracy. We see the relationship between the King of Britain and 13 colonies. This is where we also see a lot of the negative consequences. We talk about slavery, we talk about the Atlantic slave trade, the decline of the native population. So this whole slide is colonization. We move right on into the independence movement. We start with the 7 Years' War. Britain beats France in this global war for the Ohio Territory, which has ripple effects into the colonists' lives, where Britain's now taxing the colonists, restricting their travel. This caused protests. Colonists are unhappy. This is where we see the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. Britain will punish the colonists with the Intolerable Acts. And then we get this freedom movement going. Now that they're unhappy, now that there's so much tension, we see founding fathers come together. We see patriots, colonists come together for an independence movement. Continental Congress is formed, and then we see a bunch of strategies to get this movement going. Boycotting, protesting, demonstrating. No taxation without representation, that little phrase. We see the 13 colonies prepare their military, and it all ends up in the colonists sending the Declaration of Independence, declaring that they are free, why they are leaving Britain. And then we take a look at the American Revolution itself. We looked at common sense during these lessons, the pamphlet that spread this message in plain language. And then we look at some of these battles. Lexington being the first, Battle of Bunker Hill. We get defeated in Long Island, but then Washington crosses the Delaware to surprise attack on Christmas. That's the Battle of Trenton. Saratoga, we get France as an ally. Valley Forge, Washington and his troops battle a harsh winter. And then Yorktown is the end. We surround and force the surrender of the British generals. So where the midterm is, the 13 colonies win the American Revolution, become its own free country. But just here's some terms. I know it's a lot. I recommend maybe pausing it here, writing down any concepts you don't know. Go ask your history teacher before the midterm. With that knowledge, you'll have to apply it. You'll have to apply what you know to documents and answer questions based on what you're seeing in the document and what you know from social studies. So we're just going to go through some examples with some steps. We see this document here. Hiawatha is addressing the 5 nations that would make up the Iroquois. If you'd like to pause it and read it and try to find meaning for yourself, I'd recommend you doing that before I go through them, but I'm just kind of, I'm going to go and talk about how I would address each. And for all of them, I start off with the basics. I don't even start with the insides of the document itself. I don't want to get confused before I know what it's talking about, so I look for what I can find that can give me a hint on what we're talking about, and it's usually right above or right below the document. Here we see this is Hiawatha, this is the Iroquois, and we can kind of at least get a starting point. We know the Iroquois. We know that they were warring tribes in New York. They came together for a peaceful alliance. It's better to start from that, know what at least we're talking about, and then get into some of the details. And that's step 2, where we look for meaning. So if I'm reading this, I would go through and try to find parts that I can understand, parts that I can find what this document is actually trying to say. I see Hiawatha telling the Iroquois that I am with you. We are one. We have one common objective. We must unite ourselves into one common band, one voice. He keeps talking about one. He keeps talking about uniting. And from just finding the pieces that tell me that, I can find the meaning in the document. And then step 3 is answering whatever question it's giving you. So it might give you a multiple choice. Which of the following statements would likely support this excerpt? This excerpt about uniting as one. So we go through. Hiawatha believed that they should go to war? Definitely not. Native Americans do not have a religion? Definitely not. 5 nations refused to trade with each other? Definitely not. None of that is what Hiawatha is talking about. He's talking about unity. Just as practice, you might get a document like this as a short writing, as a historical context. So what caused this event to happen? That's where you go into the background. You go into what caused the Iroquois to form, or what was happening before this. 5 tribes in New York were warring. Hiawatha the peacemaker, uniting the clans. That's all good background information. His point of view and purpose. What does the author believe? That's point of view or purpose. Why was this written in the first place? Or why was this spoken in the first place? So, Hiawatha believes that conflict between the tribes needs to end. He believes that peace and unity will make them stronger. This is made to convince the tribes to unite. This is what he believes. This is why he made this in the first place. Same thing here, another document. I would pause it and see if you could try to find meaning before I kind of just go into talking about each little piece, kind of pointing out things for you. Alright, same as the last document. We start off with the basics. What is this thing talking about? We see, again, it's usually either right before or at the end of the document. You get a little piece of information that gives you a starting point. This is an Aztec account. It's coming from the Aztecs, and they're talking about a massacre at one of their temples. So you get some basics. The Aztecs, we know that civilization. We know that they were conquered by the Spanish. There's more you could put there as information you know about this civilization, but this is a really good starting point. Next, we want to find meaning. As I'm reading this, we see it's talking about fiesta and dancing and the songs, and then it goes into Spaniards determined to kill people. Screams, people wailed. It was planned in advance. They carried spears and shields, cut off both of his arms. Clearly, this document is not about the music at all. It's the, as the bottom says, it's an account of a massacre at the temple, or when the Spanish attacked this Aztec temple. And just from what we underlined, from what the document says, it's described as pretty violent. And then same thing, you go and you practice answering the questions. So if you want to try to give this one a shot on your own, once again, I'll remind you, pause when the question comes up, try to do it on your own, and then we'll see what we come up with together. But the event illustrates what idea? The Aztec account of this massacre, the Aztec account of when the Spanish attacked them. Definitely not that the Spanish valued music more. That's a silly answer. Aztec warriors had better weapons than the Spanish. We know that's not true. This is the Spanish coming in with better weapons. It actually even points out the weapons that they're bringing. Spanish were more advanced, and this is the Spanish attacking them. That's not a good answer. If this is a violent interaction, they definitely didn't have a good relationship. We see Spanish colonization of the New World could be violent, and you know this from your own historical knowledge. The Spanish were the ones that conquered the Maya, Aztec, Inca, and a lot of others as well that we talked about. But also it tells you right in the document. And same thing, you might get a historical context question or a point of view question instead of multiple choice. So historical context, you go into the Aztecs. You go into why the Spanish, what led up to the Spanish conquering the Aztec civilization. They were part of exploration. They were part of colonization. It was Spanish conquistadors that took them over in search of God, gold, and glory. Point of view or purpose, this was, it's written as an account, so it's used to describe the Spanish behavior. And likely you can say that the author has a negative view towards Spanish colonization. He's describing it and its violence. It seems like the Spanish are painted in a negative picture here. Again, just moving along. Sometimes it won't be a reading, sometimes it'll be a picture, sometimes it'll be a chart. And you have a drawing here. Start with the basics. This is in the Jamestown colony. Again, great starting point. We love to see what you can get a basis of what you're looking for. So Jamestown, in your head, on your paper, you can get a starting point. Jamestown, it's one of the English colonies. We know about them looking for gold. We know about the starving times. We know about their up and down relationship with Native Americans. We know about them growing cash crops. So now we can move on. Now this is a drawing. It's an illustration. It's not a reading, so it's hard to go through and underline things that are show you meaning. We do see in the question itself, that's a good place to look, something about Pocahontas. We see some main figures, so we want to say, all right, we're looking at the Jamestown colony. Who could those three be? This is depicting Pocahontas saving John Smith from Chief Powhatan. It's an event that we kind of talked about. Talked about its historical accuracy, but this is what this drawing is showing. Pocahontas in the middle defending John Smith, and this will have a meaning. The person that drew this was depicting something. So, which explanation for the success of the Jamestown colony is supported by this illustration, by the drawing of Pocahontas saving John Smith? Definitely not that he provided food for them during the starving time. We don't see anything about food here. This actually is showing Powhatan going after John Smith. This is not showing that at all. Pocahontas did not teach the people of Jamestown how to grow and sell tobacco. You may even remember who that was. That was John Rolfe. If you do, automatic cross out. If not, you know that's just not what this is showing. Jamestown Colony was able to win a war. Historically, you know that there wasn't a war. Also in the drawing, you see Powhatan is the one that's coming after John Smith on the floor. Not true. This is showing a friendship between John Smith and Pocahontas. She is saving him here. Once again, you might not get this as a multiple choice question. You may get it as a writing, so again, super quickly, we look at the chance you get this as a historical context question. That's, England colonizing the New World. They start the colony of Jamestown. You know about their early struggles, the starving time, conflicts with the Native Americans. You know the story of John Smith and 11-year-old Pocahontas, which helps them eventually work together. All this is historical context, what's going on. The other English colonies are also going on in this time period. Roanoke, the desire to grab land before Spain can. All this is still going on as well. You might get this as point of view or a purpose question. The author believes that Pocahontas played this crucial role in mending the relationship between Jamestown and the Powhatan tribe. That is what we see here. We see a depiction of her role in this. Here's another document that we can use as an example. Start with the basics. It's a description of a caravel. That's a great starting point. You know about the caravel during the Age of Exploration. You see the drawing of it as well, which is pretty helpful. Again, in your head, on your paper, you get this starting point of the Age of Exploration, of looking at a ship that was better in how it traveled, that helped exploration become possible. Then we look into the document for meaning. We see the caravel had thicker planks. It was able to sail closer to the wind. They're faster, easier to steer. Overall, the document says over and over that these ships were sturdier. That the fact that they use wind, that the fact that they use sails, makes them faster, easier to steer, which helped that it's a piece of technology that made exploration possible. So, you get another chance at a multiple choice question. According to the given information, what effect did the new sail design have? Definitely not harder to control. Actually, the document says that it's easier to steer. So not that. We don't know any instances of voyage conditions themselves becoming harsher. Ships became too expensive to build. This document actually doesn't mention anything about the cost of the ships, so definitely not that one. The question even says, according to the given information, no costs are mentioned. Can't be that. But it does say that this ship goes faster and it's easier to steer, which we know from our historical knowledge, we know from the document itself, that the caravel helped make traveling these distances easier. Historical context: Europeans wanted to find a new trading partner. They're motivated by spreading religion, becoming wealthy, for pride, the 3 Gs. So they go off to find sea routes to Asia. The Age of Exploration begins, and the caravel was a crucial part of this. This is what's going on in this time period. Point of view, purpose. Why is this written? It's informational. It describes how useful the caravel was. The author believes that this was important. It was an important piece of technology in the Age of Exploration. Again, just going through these quickly, so you have a chance to think about historical context, point of view, and purpose. Again, tons of other things you could write here, but just as a quick example. This one's tough. I know looking at a document like this is tough. A lot of words that you may not have seen before, a lot of words that might trip you up. So again, we gotta go through this step by step. We're gonna talk a little bit more about this later, but start with the basics. This is the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, first written constitution in the colonies, offered freedoms. You gotta find the meaning in this. I know there's a lot of words you haven't seen before, but you know they're talking about elections. Okay, people are bringing in pieces of paper with names on it, who they want to have as governor, putting things to a vote. They mention voting again. They talk about voice. This document is describing elections. It's describing a system where people can vote for their leaders. It's describing a government where people have these freedoms. So that we could answer the question, now that we kind of looked and found meaning where we can find it, we know what this document is. We know Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. We know this is talking about the right to vote. So now we can kind of go on to whatever question it's bringing up. Which best describes the significance of the document? Definitely didn't take away rights. We actually just looked at it and saw it was giving people the right to cast votes, to bring in papers with who they wanted as governor. Choice 3 says, was the first document to allow indentured servitude. Doesn't mention indentured servitude at all. Nothing about repaying debts or working or getting voyages paid. None of that's even mentioned. Created long-lasting peace between... Nope, doesn't talk about Native Americans. We know it can't be choice 4, but what we did find is that this document is about voting, and it's about freedom, and it's about rights. It's an early representative democracy. Again, you know historical context, you know about exploration, you know about the early English colonies, the New England colonies, specifically were about freedom of religion. And then point of view or purpose. This document was written to give people freedoms, to give people the right to vote. Alright, let's talk some midterm tips, now that we just did some practice questions. So some midterm tips for you. First one, start with the basics. We just did that a few times. When you start with the basics, you have to look for just the giveaways of who this is about, or what the document is, when it is, where it is. You don't have to get into the details of the document right away. You can look and find, okay, this is Paul Revere writing this first one. You find the years. In the second document, you can find where this was. This is in Boston, 1772, so find basics, get a good starting point. Tip number 2, don't get caught up in what you don't know. It's one of the big worries that students have. It's one of the things that really harm students when it comes to the midterms the most, is that they see a phrase that they don't know, like this one. Upwards of 30 chiefly mechanics who formed ourselves into a committee, and you guys don't know what that is. You panic, and you figure you can't understand any of the document. It might be words you don't know. You don't know hath, you don't know venture, or you don't know interwoven, and you feel like you have no chance of understanding this document when that isn't true. You have to use tip number 3 here. You have to use what you do know. These documents are not meant for you to understand every word and translate it word for word into 2020's language. What these are meant for is you to find meaning. It's like a scavenger hunt. Find the things that you do know and use it to find meaning. Okay, you know who Paul Revere is. That's a sentence you know. Chiefly mechanic sentence might throw you off, but then you get to, okay, watching the movements of British soldiers and gaining intelligence of their movements. Oh, I know Paul Revere used a spy organization to get information from the British, And then you would use that to warn the colonists that the British were coming. Yes, there's a piece in this document that might throw you off, but you have to find the meaning from what you do understand. Same thing here in the second document. Yeah, some of it's tough, but okay, we're talking about an important right, laws that and given consent. Okay, so I'm starting to get it, and then whenever those freedoms are lost, the Constitution must be destroyed. Okay, I see. I know colonists felt it was their right to vote or to give consent for laws. You see it in here. But they're not going to follow laws unless they have given consent. It's their right to vote. And he's arguing at the end that without that freedom, or when that freedom is lost, it's their right to revolt. My fourth tip for you. Actually mark up and annotate and take notes on the document. You should underline or highlight. You should underline or highlight. We just looked at pieces that you do know, pieces that do show importance. Underline it and take some notes. You know about Paul Revere just from these underlined words. Okay, Paul Revere, I know he's a founding father. I know about the spy organization, Midnight Ride, the American Independence Movement. You could do the same down here. You're underlining about rights and voting. Ooh, I know an example of a law that they didn't give consent for. That's the Stamp Act. It's talking about freedom becoming lost. When freedom is lost, Constitution must be destroyed. Probably talking about a revolution, leaving the government that is taking away their freedoms. Fifth tip, get rid of silly answers, historically wrong answers, not relevant answers. If you look at this letter from Paul Revere again, if you get a multiple choice question that says something about Spanish colonization, you know that's wrong. It's silly. This document doesn't mention colonization or the Spanish at all. It's not even in the same time period. Some of them are a little bit trickier, though. If you get one that talks about, says, this document's about the cost of the American Revolution, it's a little bit trickier because this does take place around that time period. We are talking about British soldiers, and it might throw you off, but costs are not mentioned here. It's not right. Same thing, if you get a multiple choice that says it's about Paul Revere's thoughts on quartering, it's tricky because we know this is Paul Revere, but nothing about quartering is mentioned in here. You have to be able to look at choices and say, definitely not what this document's about. The second one, definitely not about the origins of Thanksgiving. It's silly. Again, might be tricky. We're looking at a similar time period. Nothing about the Battle of Bunker Hill. Third one, also tricky because it says the Stamp Act was popular in the 13 colonies. I did just use the Stamp Act as a piece of outside information. I did put that as one of my notes, but it's not historically correct. This document is talking about how colonists want to give consent. They want to be able to vote. They want representation. This is wrong. The Stamp Act was not popular for Joseph Warren or for those in favor of this speech, because they were given that that tax without being represented. All right, we look at long answers or paragraph answers as our final little section. Reminder, all of these, historical context, point of view, purpose, they're all a little bit shorter answers because they're using one document. When you get a question that says, write a paragraph comparing and contrasting these two documents, or write a paragraph where you identify a turning point with these two documents, they're longer. So, again, you can kind of pause these I'm not going to go and read the whole document, but the way that these writings will work is you will get one document that you'll have to give a historical context for. This is a detailed description of the Boston Tea Party from Paul Revere's diary. And then you'll get a second document where you'll have to give point of view or purpose. This is a drawing of the same event. It's a drawing of the destruction of tea at the Boston Harbor. So again, you can read these documents, you can look at them. For the sake of time, I am going to just go into the paragraph answer responses. These will work after you get one document, answer historical context, another document, answer point of view purpose, is maybe a compare contrast paragraph. How are the two documents similar and different? So in this case, I gave some examples. They're similar. Both are the same event. Both are the Boston Tea Party. Both are from the Patriot point of view. One is Paul Revere. One is clearly in some kind of Patriot newspaper. Both are they're both in favor of the Boston Tea Party and against British taxes. If you read through them or look at it, you can definitely see that Paul Revere is on the side of the Sons of Liberty, and this drawing shows the Boston Tea Party as some kind of celebration, as a heroic thing. But then that brings us to some of the differences. Document 1's a diary entry, while Document 2 is a drawing. Document 1 gives the perspective of those planning it. It gives a lot more detail about how this thing was planned, and it gives detail about the British response. We don't get that in the drawing. Document 2 also shows this more as a celebration. It seems more of as an attempt to convince others that this was an honorable protest, which I'll give you an example of, but it's really important that we look at the requirements for this thing. It does not matter which of these yellow boxes you choose to use. This is the typical for the midterm. These long answer responses need to have a topic sentence. They need to use the documents, and you have to use outside knowledge. These are two other types of ways to remember it. I know that you guys do use these to help you remember. Either I know, we see, this shows us, meaning you make a claim, what do you know? We see, what do you actually see in a document? And then this shows us, explain what you're seeing, explain what you know. Or race response, restate the question, answer it, cite evidence, and explain. So it doesn't matter which of these you use to remember, but these are requirements for these paragraph answers. So this one I actually will read because it's a little bit difficult. While documents 1 and 2 are similar in that they both show the Boston Tea Party protest in a positive way, each of the two documents shows something different about the event. You see that yellow is my topic sentence. I'm answering the question. Next, I go into pink. I'm using document evidence next. I'm citing the document. So document 1 shows us the social part and the popularity behind the Boston Tea Party, since we see colonists cheering the protest. I'm going to give some outside knowledge, some explanation next. This would often be the goal of many things the Sons of Liberty did during the time period, as they would try to spread their message around the colonies, such as with the no taxation without representation chant. That's outside knowledge. We don't see mention of the no taxation without representation in either document, but it's something I know from history class. I do have to use both documents, so I will do the same thing now for document 2. Give document evidence and outside knowledge. In document 2, we do not see this mentioned, but instead seems to be an explanation of the planning and goals of the Boston Tea Party. Paul Revere writes in document 2 that the Sons of Liberty were planning to be nonviolent and simply use the protest to send the message that they do not approve of taxes being put on them. That's coming directly from Paul Revere's diary entry. That pink part, I'm taking it from there. But now I gotta explain it. Revere even mentions the Boston Massacre, which I know was a protest that led to British soldiers shooting the colonists and angered many in the colonies. Outside knowledge, I know about this time period. While both documents support the Boston Tea Party, document 1 is more patriotic, while document 2 is more about the detailed plan behind the event. They're similar, they show the same event, same point of view, but they're giving a different perspective, they're giving different information. Now, whether you use topic, sentence, document evidence, outside knowledge, or one of the other ways, it's the same thing. This is why I say it does not matter which you use to remember. I'm still using yellow as my claim, pink as what do you see in the documents, and blue, it shows us. I'm still answering the question with yellow, citing evidence with pink, and explaining with the blue. One more type of question we need to go through. That would be turning point. So this one is the Mayflower Compact. This is the Declaration of Independence. So if you'd like to read them and try this for yourself before I talk about it, now is a good time. We'll do the Mayflower Compact. It'll ask a historical context question. We know as context it was an English colony. They were pilgrims and separatists who settled in the Plymouth colony looking for religious freedom. The Mayflower Compact is an agreement to make a government, and it helps Plymouth become successful. Declaration of Independence, if you want to do point of view or purpose. The author, Thomas Jefferson, believes power belongs to the people. People have rights. This is anti-British. They believe it's time to leave, break up with King George, and become their own independent country. Just like before, it will ask a paragraph question that is turning point. How did both of these documents show the same turning point? How did both of these documents change the world or change history in the same exact way? In this case, both of them created governments that gave rights to the people. Both the Mayflower Compact and the Declaration of Independence believed in freedoms. Both came from a group trying to get away from mistreatment. And then you do the same exact thing. How did both change the world in the same exact way? How did both show the same significant turning point? We have in yellow an example of a topic sentence. Mayflower Compact and Declaration of Independence both changed America in a similar way, and that both created governments that gave rights to the people. In pink, I list off some of the things you see in the document. You have to use the document. And in blue, we see some outside information you can use. About the Plymouth colony, or about Thomas Jefferson believing in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those things are not mentioned in those documents. They count as outside information. Just to recap this whole thing, please prepare yourself with historical knowledge. At the beginning, I went through a timeline and some concepts. This is just a general studying. Make sure you know the units that were covered and the big topic ideas, and some of the big important events. Please be prepared to answer historical context questions, point of view, purpose, compare, contrast, and turning point answers. They will all be on your midterm. Please, when you see a document, start with the basics. See if you can get a starting point based on who wrote it, or where it takes place, or when it takes place. Then, find the parts that you do understand in order to look for meaning. Don't panic with what you don't know. Don't panic at words or phrases that you're not familiar with. Find what you do know and look for what that document means. Marking up the document, it's a good practice. Highlighting, underlining, leaving notes, crossing out silly answers that you know not to be true for the multiple choice. And please make sure to write a paragraph if it tells you paragraph. Paragraphs are longer. Needs a topic sentence. You need to use evidence from the document, and you need to use outside knowledge. Thank you for watching. I hope this helps. Please make sure to do the right preparation. Ask your peers and your teachers for help. Good luck. You got this. Yeah, I believe in you. You just have to do the right preparation and stay calm during the midterm. I know sometimes you read some stuff that throws you off, but you got this, kids. Good luck.